Good evening, everyone. Greetings from Association of Child Neurology. So this is the third webinar series on what is new in the topics, and we have tried our level best to take up simple topics and the topics that we tend to encounter in every day-to-day practice. And we have tried to focus these sessions for pediatricians and pediatric postgraduates. And to make this a little interesting, we have also ensured we have kept a quiz also at the end of this talk. So the talk will last for around 30 to 45 minutes, and then we will have a quiz for 10 minutes, and then we will take up the question and answers which all of you post in the group. So with these words, it is a proud privilege to invite none other than Pratibha Singhi ma'am. Ma'am doesn't need any introduction to the Indian audience as well as to the international audience also now. It's a proud privilege. Ma'am is currently, as many of you are aware, is working as the Director of Pediatric Neurology at Medanta. Ma'am had established uh, pediatric neurology services at PGI Chandigarh. She headed the department. She developed the pediatric neurology, started DM program, and many of the students. She has produced so many students and from PGI Chandigarh. So, ma'am is currently holding the post of General Secretary at International Child Neurology Association, and it is a proud privilege that an Indian is holding such a high post in ICNA. And we wish best wishes to ma'am that ma'am brings ICNA to India soon as a president. So, with these kind words, I would invite Professor Singhi ma'am to take over the session. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Jay Shankar. I'm really happy, and I would like to congratulate AOCN and Jay Shankar in particular and the whole team for arranging all these webinars. I think we've become even more busy during the lockdown than we were earlier. So today I have been asked to speak on neurocysticercosis in children. What's new? I believe this meeting is more for PGs and pediatricians. And so before we go to what's new, we need to revise what's old. Are we, where we are. And I'll try to add in the new things as we go along. So I'm starting with a very garden variety case scenario. 8-year-old boy, developmentally normal, 2 episodes of left focal seizures, and otherwise neurologically normal. You get a contrast enhanced CT, you see the Scolex ring enhancing lesion, your diagnosis is made, this is neurocysticercosis, and you start therapies accordingly. So with that, we do know that this is the commonest parasitic infection, the most common cause of epilepsy, and a major public health problem. And I will not go into those details. Suffice it to say that all these red regions are highly endemic areas, and there's no country which is spared because of the travel and all sorts of things. Everywhere you can see neurocysticercosis. So to remind ourselves, the pig and this part of the cycle occurs because of teniasis. So when human beings eat raw or uncooked pork, they develop this tinea solium in their intestine, and the female worm sheds the proglottids and lots of ova which go into the feces. The pigs eat these and develop these larvae and cysts, and this cycle is completed. But this cycle, remember, is only for teniasis. So it is like a perpetuating cycle, but it has nothing to do with neurocysticercosis. Neurocysticercosis occurs because of ingestion of the ova that are passed, the eggs that are passed. And this can occur either because human beings are eating contaminated food, or because food handlers have here. And this is then a dead end, because these larvae migrate from the intestine to the brain, form cysts, and sit there. And that's the end. So it's like the dead end. So for many months or years, The cyst can sit there quietly because of the various immune mechanisms to protect itself from the host. And, but once it starts growing, then it passes through these stages from vesicular to colloid to granular to calcified. What we see in India mainly are the colloid and granular stages and very little of the vesicular stage. And ultimately, of course, then we see the calcified stage. So clinical presentations will depend on where the cyst is located, how many cysts are there. So, traditionally it has been divided into parenchymal and extraparenchymal. Child may remain asymptomatic with a cyst which is discovered accidentally, but most common is epilepsy. There can be raised intracranial pressure, there can be focal deficits, and then, as I said, where the cysts are, you would have other sorts of symptoms. Calcified parenchymal NCC results in refractory epilepsy just about as often as other structural brain lesions. And therefore, nowadays, lots of attention is being given to calcification and whether we can prevent it. And it's not just nowadays. Even when I was working at Johns Hopkins, people have been working on, can we prevent calcification? Because ultimately that leads to long-term epilepsy. This is a study which we did long time ago, and I was just thinking, oh my, 2000, so it's 2020, so it's almost like 20 years. The signs and symptoms of 500 children with NCC, which is perhaps the largest series of NCC anywhere, and is quoted in the Nelson textbook. And we found that most children present with seizures, headache, and vomiting coming next. And I think even today, this is true. And most children have a single lesion in our setup, which is often ring enhancing and with a perilesional edema. Going to second scenario, 7-year-old girl, again developmentally normal, presents with sudden onset of drooping of both eyelids and double vision with associated mild headache. But remember, when you have a situation like this, you will always ask whether there is a diurnal variation of fatigability, and this child did not have. She had a partial cranial nerve third palsy. And as you can see here, so this led us to get an MRI done. And here, lo and behold, is the cyst sitting here. After treatment, she improved considerably and the cyst gradually disappeared. Another case, 10-year-old girl who presented with fever and multiple episodes of convulsions and altered sensorium with meningeal signs. Obviously, the first diagnosis in the ER was acute meningoencephalitis, and she was started on ceftriaxone and acyclovir as per the protocol. But lo and behold, when you get the MRI done, it is studded with cysticerci. And so this is what was the meningoencephalitic type of neurocysticercosis. So we gave pulse steroids, ICP lowering measures, and she gradually improved, but still had abnormal behavior. So these were some of the, garden variety and little unusual presentations. What about extraparenchymal neurocysticercosis? Thankfully, in our setup, we see very little of it. We do see it, but not as much as is seen in Latin America, etc. So depending on where we are, talking about, I already talked to you about the meningeal form, which can occur with raised intracranial pressure, can also cause hydrocephalus and focal deficits because of vasculitis, and spinal form, which can present again as a leptomeningeal or any other spinal cord syndrome. Cisternal can be both intraventricular and subarachnoid, so you can have, inside the ventricle, or you can have these kind of cysts in the subarachnoid space. So another case, 14-year-old boy with 2-month history of episodic vertigo, vomiting, headache triggered by abrupt head movements, which lasted for a short while. And in between, he was all right, except sometimes the child had mild gait ataxia. And you got the MRI done, and you have, what do you have here is a little cyst sitting in the ventricle. So this was a Bruns syndrome. cyst excision was done and his symptoms subsided. Histopathologically was found to be neurocysticercosis. So there's a recent paper, this is 2020 April, where these authors have called it as a rolling cyst, the migrating intraventricular cyst, and they believe that it's almost pathognomonic of NCC because the cyst sits there and rolls up and down, causing intermittent hydrocephalus. Another case scenario, 12-year-old boy with acute onset diffuse headache, vomiting, progressive drowsiness. You would think of encephalitis, but the child didn't have any seizures, visual problems, or focal deficit. Past history, he was diagnosed with multiple parenchymal NCC. In early life, treated with albendazole and steroids and remained asymptomatic till now. On examination, altered sensorium irritability meningismus and CCT done showed non-communicating hydrocephalus. And if you see here, this was his MRI, and you can see these both sorts of cysts. One is the intraventricular and the other is the subarachnoid cysts. The arrow is not following properly, so but you can quite well see these cysts. And so this was extraparenchymal, and these pictures are not my cases, but these are from the internet, and you see that you can have cysts anywhere. In fact, we just have a child who had an orbital mass and which was excised just about last week and turned out to be neurocysticercosis. So you can have neurocysticercosis anywhere conceivable in the body. So how about the relationship of neurocysticercosis and epilepsy? So these authors looked at 37 studies done in 23 countries with almost 25,000 subjects and concluded that cysticercosis is a significant contributor to late onset epilepsy in tropical regions around the world. I will not go into these details, but lots of factors which can cause epileptogenesis, including inflammation, infarcts, gliosis, and then finally calcification, perilesional edema. And as I said, recent interest is a lot in how calcium causes lots of problems and releases the incorporated antigens intermittently to cause these seizures. And of course, recently there's a lot of talk on association between neurocysticercosis and hippocampal sclerosis, whether repeated seizures or whether NCC per se leads to hippocampal sclerosis. There's a lot of discussion about it. We'll omit it for this talk, but remember that there are different characteristics of children with NCC and hippocampal sclerosis versus those with sclerosis alone. So you will realize that NCC is really a clinical and radiologically heterogeneous entity. So it all depends on the ultimate profile. What comes out would depend on the parasite factors, what stage, what numbers, location, genetics, the environment and behavior, poverty, intensity of exposure, sanitation, post-immune response. So all these interact to get the final picture of neurocysticercosis. So obviously, as far as the immune response goes, without going into detail, let me just tell you that there's a lot of studies on various aspects of immunology, hoping that somewhere we can act on it. Now, this CT versus MRI debate still goes on. Obviously, CT is easily available, higher sensitivity, specificity for calcified lesions. But for all practical purposes, for parenchymal lesions, MRI is a better tool, that goes without saying, and particularly for the ventricular and cisternal forms, because those are often missed. Unless they are big, they can be missed on CT. So here are the stages, how they appear. The vesicular ones appear just like black holes. The colloidal ones, I told you that granular colloidal stage is where the enhancement comes and you can see the scolex, and then finally the calcification occurs. The calcified stage, the calcification rates actually vary from study to study and from populations to populations, because there's no single method to find out. You can follow, let's say, 500 children, but how many can you follow? And then it will all depend on where the baseline started from. So it has varied, but as you can see, it can be a single spot or it can be studied with calcification. So various studies have shown it varies like from 11.3 to 19.6%. In this PGI study, which is still under publication, it was a prospective 1-year follow-up of 100 children, and we used swan images and we found calcification in 53% lesions. And at 1 year, 9% continued to have seizure recurrence, 27% had calcified lesions, and 62% showed resolutions, showing that the so-called calcified lesions if they are not fully calcified, they can still kind of regress. But once they are fully calcified, then obviously they are there permanently. But seizure recurrences were indeed higher in children with calcified lesions. Another study from PGI published recently, also 128 children with calcified NCC were enrolled out of maybe 500 plus children during that year. And seizure recurrence, was associated, when it occurred with calcified lesions, there was associated perilesional edema. And this is, the authors have collected data from 3 randomized controlled trials of antiparasitic therapy. And they concluded, now again, it varies between adults and children, but 38% of parenchymal cysts calcify after antiparasitic treatment. And they found that the factors associated with it are if you have larger cysts, more than 15 millimeters, or with edema. And if a patient has prolonged seizures, like more than 24 months with increased dose albendazole, obviously these are kind of correlated, because if the person is having more than 24 months, likely to receive more of albendazole, and lower doses of concomitant dexamethasone, which is an anti-inflammatory, or has not received early antiparasitic retreatment. So this is just published in August 2020, and brings a little bit of an insight into how and why calcification occurs. Now, these are kind of unusual giant cysts where possibly asexual or even sexual, but they just grow out of proportion and can cause a lot of edema and even compression of the ventricles, as you can see, and can become life-threatening. So what is the differential diagnosis? We talk a lot about, differentiating between tuberculomas and NCC, and we say that the NCC lesions are less than 20 millimeters, regular, less perilesional edema, etc. But tuberculomas, of course, at some point in time can be like that, but in general, you will not see a healthy child with just a small tuberculoma coming with seizures. That's how the NCC child usually presents. But of course, you must keep your mind open to all these differential diagnoses, because you can have, pyogenic lesions, toxo, fungal, etc. Most of these, are differential diagnosis for adult neurocystic sarcosis. In children, these are a bit less common. But still, as I said, you have to keep your mind open. And, NCC, you see very classic. If you see Scolex, there is no other differential diagnosis. The diagnosis is made. It's only those cases where you don't see a Scolex that the problem occurs about differential diagnosis. But remember that most children with NCC will be just normal otherwise. So because of these kind of things, we did a study. Renu did her DM thesis on how to study the comprehensive utility of clinical features, multiparametric MRI, and 2D page EITB for NCC antigen in diagnosis of intracranial ring enhancing lesions. It was a prospective study on almost 200 children, and where we looked at these children who had no Scolex, because once the Scolex is there, this is NCC. So it is the no Scolex which causes the problem. And when we used special sequences, we found that you could see the Scolex with routine MRI in 46%, but if you used with special MRI sequences, you could see it in almost 61%. And remember here, like, MRS showed a lipid peak in 18%. While we say that MRS is useful for making a diagnosis of tuberculomas because of the lipid peak, but here we did see a lipid peak in 18%. And these children were followed up meticulously for 6 months. None of them was given ATT. And most of them, the lesions either disappeared or reduced. They were treated as NCC. And none of the single REL was a tuberculoma in this whole population. So making the point that it's not such a frequent diagnosis for a single enhancing lesion without any other problem. So the newer MRI imaging techniques are these, the Fiesta as we call it, and CISS, which better define the parasitic lesions. And this is another study from adult neurology department of PGI, which again shows the similar findings as we had talked about, that susceptibility weighted angio and CISS images will pick up more of scolices which you do not see on conventional MRI. Now, this is not that you are going to do it in daily practice. You normally will not. But in a difficult case, if you have doubts, these can be used. And this is just to demonstrate how, what you do not see or see very poorly on, the usual MRI like T1 post contrast. Here you see a lesion, this is that same situation where you are seeing a ring enhancing lesion, but you're not seeing the scolex. But if you see the lower image, like this axial swan image, and here you can see that there is a little scolex, which is shown as a magnified image here. And then MRS, I just talked about, if you have a lipid peak, you think of tuberculoma. But remember that tuberculomas will also have generally other features. So what about immunodiagnosis? I think hundreds of tests have been developed to make a diagnosis of neurocysticercosis, and one really has no gold standard test. So because you have humoral immune response, you have a cellular immune response, then antigen detection, and I will not read any of these slides, but just the very fact that you have so many tests means that there is no one test which is the best. Okay. This is one of my PhD students, like how you extract these antigens. You take out from the pork and you isolate the cysts, culture them, and then you produce. And this was an excretory-secretory antigen, which can also be detected in the urine. So people have been trying to find simple methods so that you don't have to do invasive tests. For cellular immune response, again, many tests have been done, which I will skip for this talk. And this is an interesting study also done from North India, and where they looked at 406 cases and found that this particular 15 kDa reactive band on the transfer blot assay is, as they claim, is highly sensitive and specific for diagnosis of NCC. Again, I mean, this has come out just this month, 2020 September. So, but if it is truly, and if it can be used, it would be a great thing to have. And it also says that the 35 kDa band was associated with infection by multiple cysticerci. Of course, this is an isolated study, but it's an exciting study just released, so I thought I'll bring it up. Let's see whether it's, goes through the test of time. Another thing people are looking at is whether you can find any discriminatory biomarkers and potential therapeutic agents other than these albendazole, etc. So in this study, which is again a 2020 August study, can patients with idiopathic epilepsy be differentiated from single lesion NCC epilepsy? So they have done an MS-MS tandem analysis to look at mass peaks, and they have suggested that these sort of findings suggest a neurological inflammatory seizures, blood-brain barrier involvement, etc., forming a groundwork for further studies. And who knows, in next 5 years, we may have some discriminatory biomarkers. So that finishes with our diagnosis. How about treatment? It is multi-pronged, as we know. We need to treat the cyst, we need to treat the seizures, and sometimes we may have to resort to surgical interventions. I think this debate is now hardly a debate, although having said that, just last year we had this debate in Delhi, and there are some people who are fervently against treatment. But be that as it may, most people will agree that we do need to use cysticidal therapy, and across the world now, people have recognized that. However, what factors you need to consider are: where are the cysts, what is their stage of evolution, how much is the associated inflammation, what is the size, and what is the severity of symptoms. Obviously, if there is ophthalmic cysticercosis or spinal or even intraventricular, where release of inflammatory material can cause damage, you will avoid cysticidal therapy. And of course, for calcified lesions, it's no use. I mean, there's no use treating calcified lesions with cysticidal therapy. So this is a seminal study which we had done long back. It was the first study in the world literature, in fact, as an RCT in children with focal seizures and single small enhancing CT lesions, which set the pace for many other studies, where we found that children who received albendazole had a much better outcome in terms of higher and faster resolution of lesions. And here you can see the difference in 4 weeks and after 4 weeks and also the CT resolution. Subsequently, a large number of studies have come which went along with this study and showed that cysticidal therapy is indeed effective if given in a timely fashion. And now, as you know, American Academy of Neurology also recommends the use of cysticidal therapy. So the Cochrane review had looked at these things. This is also some time back, and the conclusion was, because there are studies where there are viable lesions and studies where there are these degenerating lesions or so-called non-viable lesions, and therefore many a times these guidelines are confused. And so they have said that in patients with viable lesions in adults, it may reduce, and in non-viable lesions, seizure recurrence was substantially lower, all in all favoring the use of albendazole. Albendazole versus praziquantel. Albendazole is a little more effective than praziquantel, and it's also effective against meningeal and cisternal forms, and it does not interact with AEDs or steroids. That's the good part of it. Of course, it is cheaper and quite safe. And this has a different role. Praziquantel, it produces spastic paralysis of the parasite, whereas this inhibits the glucose uptake, as you can see. But steroids and anti-epileptics, particularly phenytoin and carbamazepine, can interfere with levels of praziquantel. So these are the doses. You can read in any book. I will not spend time on this. Now, this is again the first in the world study that we did on combined albendazole and praziquantel versus albendazole alone in children with seizures and single lesion NCC. And single lesion means enhancing lesions in our setup. And we found that the resolution of lesions at 1, 3, and 6 months was better if we used the combination therapy. But in this group, which was about, I think, 110 children, we could not have a significant result. Garcia et al. Had done they started a study later. Actually, Garcia met me in Paris when we presented this, and he said, "Oh, you finished the study. We are also doing a similar study." But they were doing on viable lesions. Remember, viable lesions and these enhancing lesions are different. So, but this was done and then they found also that the combination therapy was better for viable brain cysticercosis. So these are the new guidelines for treatment of neurocysticercosis for diagnosis as well as treatment actually. So for diagnosis, they recommend the EITB and as a strong evidence, And they recommend both a brain MRI and a non-contrast CT. Obviously non-contrast CT for calcified lesion, but I wouldn't go with that. You know, I would not subject a child to the radiation of CT if on MRI you are seeing a lesion. There's no reason why you should do both. And of course, additional screening tests, you know, because you're going to use a little bit of steroids. So and plus you want to be sure it's, if there's no Scolex, you would do screening and actually look for evidence of TB elsewhere. In their, you know, setup, these are American guidelines, non-endemic areas. So please remember that we can't just extrapolate them to our setup. And for treatment for single enhancing lesion, it's the same albendazole for 1 to 2 weeks. And this guideline which says, you know, this is for viable parenchymal cysts, the live cysts, the ones which look like black holes. So if there's a single viable parenchymal cyst, then you use albendazole monotherapy for 10 to 14 days. With more than 2 viable cysts, you use a combination therapy of albendazole and praziquantel. For both SEL and viable parenchymal cysts, if the lesions do not respond in 6 months, then you retreat with antiparasitic therapy. They do recommend monitoring on those on albendazole for more than 14 days. Whatever be the evidence, in our setup, I would not recommend that every child undergoes, you know, liver function tests, etc. But certainly in certain groups, you might want to think. So, you know, can these new guidelines be really applied universally? I had already expressed yesterday, there was a talk and I had said that, you know, these guidelines do not necessarily apply to our circumstances. And I'm glad that somebody from the same place, like that is the US, has brought out these, that some of the recommendations based are on insufficient and inadequate evidence. Only one specific immunological assay has been recommended, and whereas evidence clearly supports that, you know, there are other options. And this dual therapy, which we also commented on, is based only on one clinical trial, which was actually stopped early. So, and then of course, there's a thing about surgical removal, which doesn't affect us so much. So clinicians should approach some of the recommendations with caution and actually call for the establishment of some gold standard guidelines that can be used and adapted for the diagnosis and treatment of patients with neurocystic sarcosis worldwide. So this is my request to all the youngsters, that when you see guidelines, please, you know, just don't take them as something written in gold and that you have to follow them. You have to also see your local circumstances and how different they are from where the guidelines were made. So that is about antiparasitic treatment. What about steroids? They have their potential benefits because they have anti-inflammatory action, so early resolution, lesser seizure frequency, possibly lesser calcification. So this is a trial again that we had done, a randomized controlled trial in which we had used either steroid alone, because people said that maybe it's just the steroid that is acting. So we used 3 groups, prednisolone, albendazole, prednisolone plus albendazole, and followed up these children for about at least 18 months. And you see this yellow bar is the one for disappearance of lesion with steroids and albendazole. So what we said, that this combination that we were already using, steroids and albendazole, seems to be the best way to go about. And this is also recommended in the West in the newer guidelines. This was a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials on more than 1,000 cases. And they concluded the same thing, that steroids can reduce the rate of seizure recurrence and therefore should be used. Anti-epileptics, which one should you use? There is always this thing. Nowadays, of course, levetiracetam has also come into the play field, but thankfully not much for neurocystic sarcosis. But generally carbamazepine is fine, or oxcarbamazepine, whichever you want to choose. And if you can't use it for some reason, you may have to use valproate. Phenytoin is equally good except for its side effects, particularly in girls. So you may not want to use, but cost-wise, it may work out for some children who cannot afford anything else. So how long should we give anti-epileptic therapy? Now, earlier, it was being given for 2 years, Del Bruto and Garcia and others. But we looked at, we did another randomized trial, 2 groups, where we compared the 1 year seizure-free versus 2 year seizure-free interval after giving anti-epileptic therapy. And we followed up these children, and we found that there was no difference in seizure recurrence if there was a 1 year seizure-free interval versus a 2 year. But the recurrence was significantly associated with an abnormal, neuroimaging, which means persistence of lesion. So if the lesion is persistent, we tend to give a longer duration of therapy, but otherwise 1 year is what is sufficient. In children, we thankfully do not need much of surgical intervention for neurocysticercosis, but if like one of those cases I told you, if a child has an intraventricular cyst or hydrocephalus where you might need a shunt placement, or sometimes even spinal cysticercosis where you cannot give just antiparasitic treatment, then you may need. And the current preference, of course, is endoscopic management instead of doing a major surgery. And this recent thing, this is I think from AIMS, the last Sharma BS et al. And Dr. Sharma used to work at PGI, now moved there, is a new technique for doing endoscopic removal of cysts. So lots of new techniques have come up for surgical management. So what is the evidence-based therapy then from our sort of studies? As far as cysticidal therapy, now it is well established, so that controversy is gone. Duration we were using for all children for 4 weeks, cysticidal therapy. But when we looked at a randomized study, which was published in PIDJ, we found that for a single lesion, 7 days therapy was equally effective as 28 days. And therefore, in between now, people have come to the 10 to 14 days for a single lesion. Use of steroids plus albendazole was found to be better than albendazole alone. Use of a combination therapy with praziquantel and albendazole may be better than either one alone. We cannot say with certainty because we didn't find a significant association. And AEDs were being used for 2 years, but we think that if the lesion disappeared, then 1 year of AED is good enough. People have also used lesser duration of therapy. Some people like to stop at 6 months, which we had actually done a study, which we never published. And in fact, we even tried a 3-month, if the lesion disappeared in 3 months and you stop. But seizure recurrences were more in those children if you stopped it that early. This used to be the protocol when I was working in PGI. I'm not sure whether it's still being followed, but it can't be a drastic difference. So I just put it up that if you have a cyst on neuroimaging, whether MRI or CT scan, you first start with steroids for about 4 to 5 days. On the 3rd or 4th day, once the edema part is taken care of, you start albendazole, and of course you start AEDs right in the beginning. And then after, depending on how sure you are, how big the lesions are, etc., you may need to repeat the MRI or CT after 3 months, but generally done after 6 months. If the cyst has resolved and this child is seizure free, you can withdraw anti-epileptics after 1 year. But if the cyst is persisting, then you will repeat the albendazole and continue the anti-epileptics. If the cyst has resolved but the child has had a seizure recurrence, then you will have to continue for 2 seizure-free years, or if the cyst is calcified. So this is just a simplified way of looking at it. Long-term clinical and radiological outcome, what happens to these children? So this is a study we did on 500 children, followed them up for about 9 years. And we found that seizure recurrences were 14% with single lesion, but 28% with multiple NCC. And radiological lesion, thankfully, was quite high even in those children with multiple NCC. Although, of course, it was best with single lesion. And this is the long-term cognitive outcome. And, so some amount of cognitive problem can occur almost 40% of children, and there may be a little bit of bias in this because maybe the ones that we couldn't follow were the ones who didn't have any problems, so they didn't come. But still, it's quite a large number of children who had headache, behavior, poor memory, etc. 22% of them reported poor scholastic performance, and 18% of them had a poor IQ. This whole thing, as you can see, it's a, confounding variables could be there, like multiple lesions, lower socioeconomic status, calcified lesions. They were associated with academic underachievement. A very recent study, also from North India, a cross-sectional study which has looked at treatment-naive NCC as compared to the age-matched peers. Because we were concerned about our study because we had not done the matching at the beginning. But it's interesting to note that this study has looked at cross-sectional study and found no difference. So NCC occurs irrespective of your IQ and socioeconomic status. Strategies for control, you know the cycle, anywhere and everywhere you can cut the cycle, you will help control NCC. You can do it at all levels. You educate, make sure about hygiene and sanitation, give chemotherapy. Same thing for pigs. Animal husbandry is very important. Vaccines have been tried, but there's only so much you can do. So this is another new thought process and a study which has again been just published, and this is of the use of oxfendazole. We know that oxfendazole is a potent antihelmintic, and it was being used in veterinary medicine. In fact, all the preventive aspects of NCC, pigs were being treated with oxfendazole. So somebody said, why not try it in human beings? Is it safe for human beings? So phase 1 studies have been done with multiple ascending doses and food effects, etc. 36 healthy adults were used as subjects, and oxfendazole was well tolerated in all the study groups. There were no major safety signals. So who knows, in another few years, we may have another antiparasitic agent. Of course, I already talked about this, but what I wanted to highlight here was educational programs, even for farmers, was quite helpful in limiting the exposure to tapeworm eggs, and this is in Latin America. So community interventions can reduce the rate of epilepsy in hyperendemic areas by almost 1/3, which is a huge number. The only problem is that most of these community interventions are usually done as projects rather than an ongoing sustainable project. And that's why, it sort of acts when it is done and then it goes back to square one. In our OPD, we had set up, and Monica had done a thesis on this, of the effectiveness of educational intervention in a cohort of caregivers. And we found that, doing this and showing them the life cycle and how to cut it and how to, do things at home. In fact, this was a thesis, so a doctor was doing, any social worker, educationist can do this. And this significantly improves knowledge. We had done some scoring to make it objective. And it can also result in improvements of dietary, hygienic, and sanitation practices. So it is something worth thinking about in every clinic or every hospital where children with NCC are seen. And these are some other studies, reiterating the same thing, that health education is a very important way of preventing NCC. So my take-home messages are that we know that NCC is most common, and neuroimaging is actually pivotal in diagnosis. Serodiagnosis, if it comes positive, it helps in making a diagnosis. Negative has no meaning. Cysticidal therapy and steroids need to be used and used properly. In calcified lesions, when a lesion becomes calcified and there are seizures, prolonged antiepileptics may be required. Very few children may also require neurosurgical interventions, and we should try to prevent and potentially eradicate NCC as far as possible. I think Jaishankar had told me to keep a lot of time, and I hope that I've been able to do that. And so thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singhi. On behalf of the AOCN, I wish to express heartfelt thanks that you took this on late at night. Thank you very much. It was an excellent talk as usual. I'm extremely fond of this talk, and every time I hear it, I pick up something new from it. So thank you very much. And I will hand over to Dr. Shankar Kaushik for further proceedings and to start the quiz. Dr. Kaushik, please take on from here.
Yes, thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Professor Singhi, ma'am, for delivering one of the excellent topics. I would request Dr. Singhi to stop sharing the screen.
How do I get it? Stop.
Thank you, ma'am. So welcome all the students. So this is going to be a Kahoot quiz from Association of Child Neurology. So this quiz, this is created to promote that the students are reading the topic well before the class, and they listen to the class also attentively. And those who have listened to Dr. Singhi very carefully, you could answer a lot of questions. So please, these are the instructions for Kahoot. Please open Kahoot in your mobile app or in the laptop or in the desktop. If you're using a desktop or a mobile laptop, write kahoot.it. Once you type it, it will ask you for a nickname. So please use a 15-character limit. And suppose your name is, my name is Kaushik, I would prefer to write the first 5 letters of my word, of my name, and then the mobile number. This is to ensure that we are able to know the mobile numbers of the students who are entering. It is a humble request, not for pediatric neurologists and trainee pediatric neurologists not to participate, but if you are very keen in participating, please write it as neuro, and you can write any number. This is to ensure that we don't give you any prizes or awards. There are around 20 questions. Please remember that the faster you answer, higher you score. So it is not about just answering higher number of questions, because it is quite possible that the topper could be scoring 16 out of 20, 2 or 3 people, but the one who has answered very fast will be able to do it a little fast. It's a self-paced challenge, so it is up to you how fast you do it. Do it very, ensure that you press the next button once you go into the quiz. The questions are time bound. You cannot exceed. The time limit is always indicated against each question. Some of the questions are for 20 seconds. Some of the questions are for 30, and some of them for 1 minute, depending upon the type of the question. The quiz master's decision will be final, and the winners will be announced at the end of the quiz. So once the winners are announced, it is a humble request that in the chat box, please write your email ID and the phone number so that we are able to contact you and give you the awards which are there. So now I'm opening the Kahoot pin. The Kahoot pin for today's session is on the screen. The Kahoot pin on today's session is on the screen, and it is 06226005. I'm repeating, it is 06226005. You can also see the link to join the quiz in the chat box. Dr. Ram, welcome, Dr. Ram. Dr. Ram has posted.
Hello, sir. Yeah. The link and the game pin are both posted in the chat. It is working, as some candidates have already started. All
Great.
The best to all attendees.
Great, great. So, Ram, please keep us posted on the number of students who are joining and number of students who are completing. So
Definitely.
Please be very fast and don't get distracted.
I think we have a lot of battled quizzes already. I think this is the third quiz delegates are doing. So I think quite a few people know the rules on the back of their hands already. So I think they've already started. It's going gung-ho. We have 135 attendees in our Zoom session right now. We have 41 attendees in the quiz. It's gone to 58 now. So
Great.
Guys, keep joining, keep joining.
Great.
Okay.
I would request,
Already,
Ram, I would request everybody to join. If you're a neurologist, pediatric neurologist, write neuro in your nickname and write any number.
I'd also like to mention that we have something for everybody. If you listen to this quiz, you will. If you listen to the talk, Pratibha Ma'am's talk was amazing. If you listen to this talk, you can answer a lot of questions. If you have listened and it's been a lot of information which you've taken in, you'll be very comfortable. If you haven't listened or come halfway also, you will have something for you in this quiz, okay? Go ahead, Kaushik. Kaushik, sir. Okay, I'll just give you an update about what's happening in the quiz. We have 73 people have joined in. We have a leader already. It's early stages, but we do have a leader. KKAGAN, K Kagan, who was, who has a number of 200202. He is leading, he or she is leading right now. We
Great.
have Renu K, second place as of now, but it's still very early stages.
Ram, we are ensuring that we are distracting the audience, so let them answer.
Yeah, okay, good. And we have 75 people have joined so far. Okay, the leader has finished 35% of the questions. And so far, somebody has got 3 correct answers. Okay. Okay. Now what I'll try.
Let them answer. Are you able to share the screen?
Yeah, I'll try to share. Yeah, I'll try to share my screen. Can you make me co-host if you don't mind? Yeah, very good. So I'll try to share my screen now, and you guys should be able to see what's happening. Just give me a few seconds. Okay. Now, I hope you can see what's happening. We have 81 candidates who have joined so far, 81 of those Renu K, who's leading right now with 6,212 points. And to all of you, the point system is very labile, it's very fragile, so it will jump up and move down quite easily. I think our leader has finished 50% of the quiz. Now, what I'm going to do is, when we get many of the candidates who are completing the quiz, we will be shutting shop. This quiz will not be open forever. So we will be shutting shop. So do not, you will have to go as fast as you can. And obviously the fast.
Okay, so this is to ensure that those who have joined late, the game pin of the quiz is 06226005. It is 06226005. This is the game pin for Kahoot quiz. Ram, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Take this quiz.
Yes, yes. Now we can hear you, Ram.
Yeah. So I hope you can see my screen. You can see how fluctuating the leaderboard is.
Can you post the link again?
Yeah, I will post the link. Yeah, I'll post the link again.
The quiz game pin is for Kahoot is 02260005. Please open Kahoot app in your mobile phone or kahoot.it in your web browser and type the game pin as 06226005, or please click the link that has been posted by Dr. Ram.
Okay, everyone. So we have the link and the pin have both been posted. And I'll just give you an update. I'll just open my quiz and let's see what the update is. We have a neurologist who's leading right now. In second place, Mohit. Mohit is in second place. And we do have someone in third place who has not written their name, and Sanha is in fourth place, and Arch is in fifth place right now. Okay.
Good. So we are halfway through, Ram.
The leader has completed, Dr. Renuk is the leader who's completed 90% of his or her questions.
Please,
second place,
neuro people, they are very good. They're all students of Dr. Singhi. So they will score highest.
Yeah, Pams has completed 80% of it. She has completed 18 questions already. Okay. And we have 96 people who have taken the quiz so far. And we're coming to the end. First few people have started completing. The rest of you chop up. Come on, guys. I'll just attempt to share my screen so that you can see what's happening. So this is our leaderboard as it stands. This is our completion right now. I'm sorry, I'm manipulating the screen. Yeah. So we do have a candidate who has completed. The rest of you, as fast as you can, please. Come on, guys, as fast as you can. This will not stay open forever. We will be shutting shops soon. I have noticed that many of you have come to the 70% mark. Okay, 35 of you have come to the 30%. Sorry, you have only 30% of the quiz left. You have about 5 or 6 questions left. As fast as you can, please. I think some of you have come to the last few questions. Very good. We have somebody on the 19th question, somebody on the 18th question. I will now stop sharing my screen because I'll just keep a little bit of, we will keep a little bit of, what do you call it? I don't know what word to use, a little bit of build up before we give the little bit of suspense, before I release the winners. You have a few more minutes. After this, Dr. Kaushik will be discussing the answers. In the meantime, I'll be tabulating. And I'll just try to find out who has finished, how many have finished. You have about 2 minutes more.
Ram, thankfully, Kaushik has to just ask questions. Dr. Singhi will answer.
You're very lucky.
So a minute more, Dr. Ram, can
we have
that?
We have a minute more and then we'll be completing.
Great. So keep a track of the winner, Dr. Ram. Once we finish all the questions with Dr. Singhi, then we will give it over to you again.
Yeah, yes. Everyone, I see many people on the 18th and 19th question. As fast as you can, please. Okay, the time is cutting short and I will be cutting in about less than 1 minute now. Come on, everyone, finish. Let's cross this line together. Okay, come on, everyone. Let's finish. Let's get past line. Okay.
Okay, Ram, is it finished?
Okay. I am closing now.
Okay. Thank you, Ram. Please keep a track of the winner and please post in the chat box so that they're able to reveal the winner is able to reveal their email ID.
We'll be doing that.
Okay, I'll take up the question to the audience now.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, one of the questions Dr. Deepak has asked is, what is the time to repeat a CT scan? Is it 3 months or 6 months to see the resolution?
So as I had mentioned in my talk, normally you could do it after 6 months if a child is doing well. But if you had concerns to start with, one, if you had, let's say, multiple lesions, or there was a lesion without a scolex and you want to see that, is it resolving or not, then you can do it earlier. That's why we say 3 to 6 months. Because if there is any doubt that this is neurocysticercosis or not, then you want to do it early. But if you're pretty sure that there's a Scolex, the child is doing well, no further recurrence, then you need not do it for up to 6 months.
Ma'am, another question is, what is the treatment of neurocysticercosis, NCC encephalitis?
In encephalitis, you have to use steroids, anti-inflammatory basically, so reducing the cerebral edema and giving IV dexamethasone followed by oral steroids. Some of these children really require very long periods of steroids. I still remember we had a girl who had recurrent bouts of raised ICP. The moment we started tapering steroids, she would again come back. Although there were other children where there was also encephalitis, but less of cerebral edema. So in those cases, we could, after controlling ICP, giving steroids for a pretty long time, we could even use antiparasitic treatment, of course, under supervision. So mainly is to control the cerebral edema. But having said that, many children will keep getting recurrent seizures or recurrent raised ICP, and the prognosis is really not good. Thankfully, they're very far and few. But if the brain is studied with cysts, with edema, with encephalitis, it's not a very happy situation.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Out of your practice, which anti-epileptic would you prefer? You have already answered it, but
Yeah.
In your practice, what would you prefer?
Yeah, see, normally I would just use carbamazepine or Oxcar. I mean, in certain situations, I actually prefer carbamazepine because you can monitor the levels. And looking at our population, their compliance, etc., then you can at least know where you stand in terms of levels. Otherwise, you can use Oxcar. As I said, I mean, if people cannot afford that, then phenytoin is a good drug as far as control of seizures goes. It's just the side effects one is concerned about.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Now, if you have reaction to carbamazepine and or phenytoin, and they often they often cross-react, so then you may need to use valparin.
Okay, thank you,
or
ma'am.
levetiracetam, any of them.
Correct. So, ma'am has very importantly highlighted that even you can prefer drugs like phenytoin because they are going to be ultimately cheap medication. So it's always an option. Dr. Preeti Jain has congratulated you and wanted to know on your take on albendazole dose.
The dose is the same, 15 mg per kg per day in 2 divided doses. In fact, in children, sometimes some people recommend because of the metabolism, maybe even 3 doses may be better, but the standard practice is 2 doses. And as I said, I mean, for single lesions, people use 10 to 14 days. And multiple lesions, I still use 28 days because multiple lesions is a game by itself.
Thank you. Professor Rajeshwar Dayal from Agra has congratulated you for an excellent presentation, ma'am. There is another
he's attending?
I told you that when people see your name, many people attend. So is vasculitis a feature of neurocysticercosis? There is another question on, is vasculitis a feature of neurocysticercosis, and what is the cause of infarct in neurocysticercosis?
Yes, you must remember that all these, things, whether it's, TB, whether it's neurocysticercosis, any infection is associated with inflammation. And inflammation causes vasculitis. So we have seen, so not all the things that appear like stroke and NCC are necessarily permanent vasculitis. They can be transient, or sometimes even the inflammation can produce a transient narrowing of the vessel and cause a stroke. But if it is a bad vasculitis, then it will obviously cause obstruction and ischemia and infarct. And then of course, another thing, I mean, if you have subarachnoid NCC, remember that subarachnoid NCC will cause obstruction there, both of the vessels as well as of the CSF. So that's why you get hydrocephalus and you get infarcts. So that's another thing. I was talking about parenchymal NCC in the first instance, and subarachnoid is a different mechanism.
Yes, ma'am. Another interesting question is that should all NCC be treated, should be started on albendazole, and should albendazole and steroids be started simultaneously or sequentially?
So actually, I already answered that
Yeah.
there was this thing about whether or not to treat, but now it's accepted. Why would you not treat? You know, you have a safe drug which has shown results, and you don't want to leave untreated parasites. And it's not only that, you know, the parasite that you're seeing, but sometimes even, you know, there are so there's some disturbance. So sometimes there are even, you know, other cysts that may be evolving. So you would like to treat. So I would treat any child, except calcified, of course, which I mentioned, where there's no use treating. And what was the second part?
Do you want to try it sequentially, or do you
Oh,
want
the
to do it?
steroids. Yeah, I mean, normally it's a sort of postulation. Nobody really knows that if you start antiparasitic therapy, the cyst will lyse and will produce, substances which will increase the inflammation. And therefore, steroids are given to prevent that. So that's why you start about 3 days earlier so that the anti-inflammatory effect sets in, and then you start antiparasitic treatment. That's the usual thing.
Yes, ma'am. There is another interesting question on multiple ring enhancing lesions. So how do you differentiate NCC from tuberculoma in multiple REL?
As I said, extremely rarely the starry sky appearance can occur because of tuberculosis. But remember that if there are multiple lesions because of tuberculosis, the child is likely to have tuberculosis, other telltale evidences of tuberculosis. You might have the, X-ray chest, which may show miliary tuberculosis as well. The MAN2 may be, very strongly positive. There may be a contact. I mean, look for TB elsewhere, because otherwise the starry sky appearance, of course, in that starry sky, if you can see some lesions with Scolex, then the diagnosis is made. But if you don't see any Scolex and you see multiple small lesions, then tuberculosis, again, unlikely. Tubercular lesions are generally irregular, supratentorial, and at the base of the brain, and conglomerate. So generally there's not much of a confusion. Very rare case is there some confusion.
Ma'am, another question is that do we recommend EITB for cases where the Scolex is not seen, or do we do it better to do a SWAN sequence?
What do we recommend? Sorry.
Ma'am, Dr. Rajni is trying to ask that do we recommend EITB, enzyme EITB for the cases where the Scolex is not seen, or do we do is it better to do a SWAN sequence, the MRI?
Oh, I mean, the SWAN sequence is obviously better because, but it's not available easily.
Yes. One of Dr. Anupama has asked, what is the dose of dexamethasone in neurocysticercosis that you use?
It's no different than what you use for raised ICP, that 0.15 mg per kg, so every 6 hours or whenever, I mean, it's mainly for raised ICP. Remember that, right? So all this thing about, whether to use oral steroids or whether to use DEXA, you can just, in a usual case, just use, 1 to 2 mg per kg of oral steroids, prednisolone. But if a child is vomiting, is sick, or has a edema, massive or significant edema, then you use IV dexamethasone.
Ma'am, another interesting question which we commonly encounter, what do you do with incidentally diagnosed asymptomatic NCC?
Well, actually, you don't need to do anything except deworm the child and the family.
Correct.
Because there's no reason to start anti-epileptics or, prolonged anti-parasitic therapy. But accidental, you mean just a calcified lesion, I believe,
Ma'am, there was another term which probably is little they wanted to ask, that how is calcified NCC different from non-viable cyst?
Oh, okay. I told you this causes a lot of confusion in many people's mind. So viable cyst is one which has not started degenerating. So it is the vesicular form. It is a complete cyst and it has no mild or no enhancement on contrast imaging. So the ones that I showed in the first picture, like those black holes as I call them. So those are the viable cysts. All other cysts, including the single enhancing lesion, ring or disc or partially calcified, are all non-viable because the process of degeneration has already started. So viability is finished.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. The last question which one of the attendees have asked is, what is the cutoff of number of lesions to decide whether or not to give albendazole? So when do you want to label it as multiple NCC?
Well, this is there's no like a fixed number, but up to 2 to 3, you can, not call multiple in the true sense of the term, but anything beyond that, it is multiple lesion.
One more question has been asked. What is the size of the cyst to call it as a giant NCC?
Again, I mean, there's no cyst volume or cyst size that is mentioned. It just strikes you as a giant. So, I mean, it's just too big. It's almost like, 20 times or 50 times bigger than the usual NCC cyst. So.
Yes, thank you so much. These were some of the questions, and thank you for answering.
Can I ask just one question, if you don't mind, Dr. Kaushik?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, sometimes we see that, we on repeated MRIs, the cyst keeps persisting. You repeat after 6 months, then you repeat after 1 year. What is your opinion on a repeat course?
Oh, I would give, as I said, after 6 months, if the lesion is persisting, I would give again a repeat course. And now, as I said, this is recommended by the new guidelines also. The question was whether you would give only albendazole or would you give albendazole plus praziquantel. So retreatment is kind of, accepted. These days, I think that if albendazole, has not worked completely and the cyst is persistent, perhaps it may be wise to try a combination because, both the mechanisms may act. I mean, there are no studies to prove whether one is better than the other, but certainly treatment is advocated.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Few more questions. What do you do for asymptomatic viable NCC? Viable lesion, asymptomatic, that is detected incidentally.
Yeah. Those need to be treated with antiparasitic because someday or the other they will degenerate and produce symptoms. So they are to be treated.
Ma'am, do you have a difference of the duration of anti-epileptics in single and multiple NCC?
Yes. I mean, as I said, if the single lesion disappears in about before 1 year, then we can stop if the child is seizure free for 1 year and the lesion has disappeared. Multiple lesions very rarely will go, and that seizure recurrences are associated with multiple lesions. So in multiple lesions, 2 years is generally needed, 2 years seizure free.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for answering all our questions so patiently. It has been a great session. So
thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll just wait for the Dr. Ram. Can you announce the winner?
Yeah. So in first place, we do have a neurologist. We are not giving prizes to neurologists, but one neurologist has got first place. His or her name is, neuro is the first 5 letters, obviously, and then the number was 9810. That's the only identification I have of this gentleman, this person, lady or gentleman. That person has answered 19 out of 20 questions correctly. Neurologist, could you just announce yourself here? I mean, just nice to know who you are. So if you could just put your name in the chat, it would be nice. Sir or ma'am.
It's okay, Dr. Ram. I am sure it will be ma'am student.
Okay. Okay.
We won't announce. I am sure. Please tell the winner.
Okay. The next place, I'm not sure whether this person is a neurologist or because the way the person was answered looked like a neurologist. Dr. Mohit, M-O-H-I-T. Your number is 9996524. If you could please mention in the chat your name and where you work or where you study, please, that would be nice. And your email ID. Dr. Mohit.
Can you raise your hand, Dr. Mohit? If you raise your hand, we will be able to introduce you. Oh, this is Mohit Bansal.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. You know Dr. Mohit Bansal, sir?
He incidentally happens to be our student.
Okay. Well,
That's very good.
Dr. Mohit, you have done remarkably well. You've got a very good score. I will announce the next candidate after this. I just request all the other candidates.
So the
other candidates.
Winner should be introduced to the audience also.
Yeah. I request Dr. Kaushik, if you can introduce the winner, please. Dr. Mohit Bansal.
Okay, Mohit Bansal is the winner, and who is the runner-up, Ram?
Okay, so runner-up, I am not sure the name. Unfortunately, this gentle person did not put the name here. I'll read out the number. If the person could mention your name in the chat or raise your hand, it would be nice, please. 091-01989. This is the name or number, the number which the person had entered as a nickname. Could that individual please raise your hand, please? 091-01989. Yes, somebody has raised the hand. Can you raise your hand again, please? Rakesh. Dr. Rakesh, can you just raise your hand again, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, we have introduced. Dr. Rakesh, welcome.
Okay. These are first place and second place. Dr. Rakesh, you have got 13 questions out of possible 20. You've got them correctly. Very good job. Sorry, Dr. Kaushik, I couldn't hear you.
Who is the third person? Who is the third place runner-up?
Third place, Dr. SANJE. SANJE, number 9003938.
Can you please identify yourself?
Yes, somebody has raised their hands. SANKAUL, Sankal has raised his or her hand.
Oh, great.
Okay, good job. If you could mention in the chat box, please.
I would congratulate all the winners, and I would request all of them to kindly post your email ID in the chat box. Yes, please post your email ID and the full name in the chat box.
Yeah. And now everybody else, oh, sorry, all the other people who attended the quiz, it would be nice to have your feedback in the chat box if possible, because we get better based on your feedback, please. Go ahead, Kaushik, sir. Nothing else from my side.
Okay, I just wanted to have a small polling. Can you all see the screen? I wanted to know and have an idea from the students whether they like this idea or should we continue. So the feedback is very, very important for us to So I'm waiting for a no answer. Okay, thank you. So I also wanted to, so I can see that 100% have answered yes, they like this idea of question. And I also wanted to know whether you like the way the quiz is conducted right now. Please give us a honest feedback so that we learn and we improve ourselves. And if there are suggestions, please post it in the chat box. Trust me, we read, we grow only from your feedback. Please give your suggestions, if any. Thank you very much. So I can see that majority, at least 3/4 of the people are happy the way the quiz is conducted. So good, congratulations to Ranjit and Ram, the way it is being conducted. I had requested the winners to open the video, but they have denied. Dr. Rekha. Okay.
Why they are in their sleep suits?
Oh, quite possible. Quite possible.
I'm just sorry, I don't have the second person, 091-01989. Is that Dr. Juhi Gupta? No, Dr. Sir, Dr. Rakesh, could you send me your email ID and May your email ID, please?
He's, I think, professor, former
Oh.
professor in Medical College in Agra. I think he's left.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank
he's
you,
the
thank you.
same Dr. Rakesh Bhatia.
Yeah, he delivered the talk in neurological complications of vaccines.
Okay. So I'll quickly run through the questions that we had. Armstrong performed an autopsy in this building and reported the first case of neurocysticercosis in India. This is Madras Lunatic Asylum. This was an image that was to reveal that it was a racemose, and if you students can identify, this is not only in this ventricle and it is extending up to lower down also. So it's a racemose ventricle. And neurocysticercosis was featured in the TV series, premiere of which famous series? This was House. So the answer is obviously none of the above. So this was a googly to ensure. So this was another image question. Which MRI sequence was used to identify intraventricular or subarachnoid neurocysticercosis? The correct answer is Fiesta, SWAN, and 3D CIS correctly. So many students would have definitely answered. So the answer is C, 1 + 2 + 3. In this question on calcified NCC, yes, it can trigger inflammatory reaction, but the adverse reactions, right? Adverse reactions, that is the paradoxical adverse effect, are not due to the toxic effect of the drug. So the correct answer is B. But yes, asymptomatic individuals do develop seizures or the headache after taking antiparasitic drugs. The other option is also perfectly right. So what is not true about albendazole? It is important to realize that albendazole should be given after eating the meals. It should not be given empty stomach. So this is C is the wrong answer. That means not true about albendazole that it should be given in empty stomach is the answer. This was another googly question to ensure that all these characteristics are markers to suggest that this is neurocysticercosis. So the answer is none of the above. So this was not only a question to check your talent, but it is also a teaching the slide to know that these are some of the points that you should not miss while you're identifying neurocysticercosis in image. Choose any two of them. Might have a poor prognosis. Spinal and subarachnoid do not have a very, very good prognosis as compared to cerebellar and subfalcine location. Which of the following has maximum potential in preventing NCC? The textbooks definitely mention that vaccines for livestock is a very, very important measure, preventive measure, which can also be done for this thing. So this was another case scenario where a child presented with generalized seizure, diagnosed with neurocysticercosis. Phenytoin started 6 months, follow-up scan, the cyst totally resolved. You can consider tapering and stopping the anti-epileptic drug. And this is another child where the cyst has not been resolved. You will have to repeat a cysticidal therapy. As ma'am has very clearly pointed out, many of the places we will prefer combination also at that point of time if the primary treatment has failed. But yes, cysticidal definitely needs to be given in these children. If a child presented to you with a generalized seizure, neurocysticercosis, phenytoin started for 6 months, follow-up scan, the cyst has got calcified. Now the child is seizure free. Many of the time you take a decision based on the EEG, and many times, as ma'am has rightly pointed out, many times you might have to continue anti-epileptic for a duration for as long as 1 to 2 years of duration. Which of the following is not a contraindication for cysticidal therapy? If it is an extraocular cyst, you can give cysticidal therapy. It is not a contraindication. Surgical management is indicated in very, very specifically subretinal NCC. Please do not give, and this is one of the reasons why indirect ophthalmoscopy is always done before we do give albendazole therapy. So subretinal neurocysticercosis requires surgical management rather than giving an albendazole therapy. This was a 10-year-old boy who presented with a severe bitemporal headache off and on, and his NCCT revealed calcified NCC. Please think of migraine also as a co-association. Many times you will realize that calcified NCC is an incidental finding, and half of the time parents are worried about calcified NCC and the symptom is actually a migraine. So ensure that headache, diarrhea and everything is maintained. This is a 6-year-old boy who presented to you with encephalopathy for 4 days. Our MRI revealed multiple NCC with perilesional edema. The fundus revealed papilledema. What will be the most appropriate treatment? Features of raised ICTP needs to be covered. So ensure that mannitol is given. With somebody who is having multiple NCC, never do a CSF study, never start albendazole. If the child is sick, oral prednisolone might not be a very good option. Dexamethasone and mannitols are very good options which are there.
So can I just add?
Yes,
that
yes,
you
ma'am.
can also use hypertonic saline these days.
Correct.
3%.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. 7-year-old child with calcified NCC. He was treated with albendazole 1 year ago. Now presented with a repeat episode of a focal seizure. It is important that when a child with calcified NCC presents to you with a recurrence, as ma'am has also very rightly pointed out, think about MTS association. You should consider screening for MTS, especially if the child has had multiple episodes of focal seizure. And the wrong management is changing the anti-epileptic altogether. So that's not the way to manage that particular child. This is a case of a spinal neurocystic sarcosis, a short course of steroids. Definitely look for a response. There is no point in getting a repeat imaging done within 1 month. Urgent neurosurgical intervention might not be required in such cases because you will have to see the response to the steroids. So it is steroids that is very, very important in such a child, which is there. And blooming effect is always seen on an FFE or a GRE image and not on T1 inversion recovery image. So this is not a feature of neurocystic sarcosis. So these were the questions which we had asked. Hope you all enjoyed. Ma'am, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm so glad that you have, you all guys are so many enthusiastic participants. I think it's a great job that you all do.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time, and it was a great evening.
Pleasure.
Congratulations to the winner. And
yeah,
Ram,
congratulations to you. He is your student as well. So
yes.
And to Anju. I think the runner-up is Anju's student. Huh?
Oh, so, is it? Oh, great. Dr.
Yeah.
Anju wanted to speak something.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dr. Anju raised the question. Okay, thank you very much. Wish you all thank you. And it is a
bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.